welcome to the Surrogate Dad Podcast. Today I've got a special guest, my first guest, a longtime friend, Uncle Mo, Morris Broder. And Morris is a longtime ex-police officer with a lot of experience in the auto industry and car-related issues. So he's here to talk to us today about purchasing vehicles. And so welcome to the show, Morris.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, let's launch right into it. And the first question, and I think the answer to this one is fairly obvious, but new or used for young folks?
Well, you know what? Unless your mom and dad gives you a new car, you're going to end up buying a used vehicle.
Don't get me into things I can't afford yet.
So used is generally the first experience for a young person. And to be honest, I think it's a good experience. It really gets you into the whole car industry, car culture, which as young people we're really excited about. Everybody's loves getting that first set of wheels, which leads to freedom and independence.
Okay, and I believe that's correct, the old saying that when you buy a new vehicle and drive it off the lot, you lose like 10 grand or 5 grand instantly right off the bat. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, it is. As soon as you drive off the lot, instant depreciation. This is the second biggest purchase you'll probably make in your lifetime over time. First is a house, that's the highest expense, but usually that's an appreciated value, not a car. That's downhill as soon as you leave the lot.
We are going to do a session on buying homes, and Dad is an expert on that, so we'll talk about that in another session. So, okay, good. So yeah, really when you think about it, the money you lose driving a new vehicle off the lot, that's enough to buy a good used vehicle or a decent used vehicle.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So, now, of course, when you get to that stage in life, when you've got the money to spare, and you want that special vehicle, that's a different story, but we're not talking about that today. Okay, so when they go up to buy a vehicle and they're at the dealership, should they finance it? Should they try and pay cash? Should they finance it at a bank? What thoughts on that?
Cash used to be king, but that's no longer the case anymore. And there's some dealerships that refuse to take cash, believe it or not.
You mean you have to finance through them?
No, you can get your own financing through a bank, but they would prefer to finance because what they do is they're preferred lenders. And they can get you relatively, oftentimes better interest rates than you yourself could get. But understand, it's not completely altruistic. They get a kickback from the bank for getting that loan out to the bank. So they do make more money if they finance it. And people think cash is king anymore. It's not.
And here's a good question for you that I don't know the answer to. I always made this assumption. When the dealership finances it and they give you this great 2% or ridiculously low rate, are they adding to the price of the vehicle to account for some of that?
Well, that's the thing you need. Important question. What they'll often focus on is right away they'll say, well, how much can you afford, or what do you want for monthly payments? That's a pitfall. Don't do that.
Answer that, you mean?
Don't answer that. Just simply say to them, no, what's the price of this vehicle walking out of here? What would I pay walking out? What is the price? We'll figure that other stuff later. Another good thing too, and I'll jump into that, advertising. If you find an advertisement for the vehicle that you want, and it'll have a stock number in there, it'll have the price, it'll be something along the line of all-in price, then that's good if you walk in with that ad and say, this is what I want to pay for this vehicle. And if they try to upsell you on all things and whatnot, that's well and good if you want to negotiate. But I would recommend that price is the price, that's what your advertising it is, and there's actually laws on that. And that's a good way to maybe start. And they'll always try to add value to the vehicle because at the end of the day,
I will ask you about add-ons later, so don't get into add-ons
we won't get into it. Okay, yeah.
So what about, and maybe you said this or you just implied it, you know how sometimes you go to a dealership, they tell you the price of the vehicle, you go to buy it, and there's a several $100 charge. They add on this...
Like a document fee.
Document fee, that's right. It. Yeah. Can you refuse that?
Absolutely. You can refuse anything.
What's... In the real world, how often will they go for that? Okay, you're right.
Well, there are some dealerships that advertise they don't do that. They'll say no documentation fee. May very well be added on the price, but so be it. But at the end of the day, you can say, well, you know what? I don't think I should pay for your paperwork and your staples. I'm not gonna pay this. So understand that everything is a negotiation. You don't have to simply accept what they're selling to you. You can walk away. You negotiate, sell hard, work hard. A lot of people think, well, you know what, I really want this, and next thing you know, they're paying too much.
That's a great point. One of the things we can all take away from is that everything is negotiable. Now in Canada, you go into a department store, generally the price is the price. There's certain places in Canada, United States where the price is the price, but vehicles, houses, most big purchases, everything's negotiable. And don't hesitate to negotiate. And if it's not negotiable, you'll find out. They'll let you know.
At some point in time, there's a price there. This is all we're willing to sell it for. This is it. And you either say, okay, accept it, or walk out and go somewhere else.
I've got two things to say about that. Two things that I learned over the years that have actually worked pretty well. One of them I don't use because it's pretty powerful, and I used it once, and the poor guy was squirming so bad. I felt so bad, but it's when you're negotiating, ask for something 3 times before you give up. And I was doing it with this one dealer, and I asked him 3 times, can I get this price? No, that's the price. Are you sure you can't do a little bit off of that? No, we can't. You sure you can't? And he started sweating and squirming, and I thought, my gosh, so 3 times asking is pretty powerful. And another thing that worked pretty well is when I buy a vehicle, I go into the dealership and I say, we look at a vehicle, and I say, I'm not going to negotiate with you. You give me one price, and I either take it or walk away. If it's too high, I'm not doing the deal. If the price is fair to you, fair to me, I'll take it.
Absolutely, absolutely, because you need to understand. Oftentimes, people go in there thinking they're at the behest of what these people are trying to do because they control the finance, etc. No, they need to make a sale. They need to make a living, and the dealership needs to sell cars. So go in as an equal. You don't never go in thinking that they're better than you on this situation or circumstance, because there are car dealerships are like dandelions. They're everywhere. You don't have to stick with one, right?
That's a great point. And lawyers will often do this. When lawyers are in a negotiation, they want to know how many lawyers you're bringing to the table so they can bring a couple more. It's an intimidation thing. And don't ever be intimidated. Don't ever think that they have more power than you just because you're young and inexperienced.
Right.
It's like you said, you're going in as equals, and don't go for any of these, well, I have to do it this way. No, you don't. You don't have to do anything anyway.
You don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
And interesting point you mentioned about lawyers and needing other lawyers. If this is your first vehicle, it's probably not wise to go by yourself. Take an older brother, older sister, father, mother, a favorite uncle, somebody that's a little more experienced and understands the game better than you. If you go in there as a young person, your first purchase, I'll tell you what, you're going to pay too much, guaranteed. Guaranteed. I did. You probably did when I was a young person. That's just the way the world is. So bring a little experience with you is not a bad thing. And if you want to be independent and say, oh, I can make this decision by myself, at the end of the day, this decision is yours, but maybe bring a confidant with you to help you out, right?
That's interesting, and you just made me think, maybe we'll have to have another session one day I planned on having a session on dealing with authority, dealing with the police. But this reminds me of a story you'll appreciate as an ex-police officer. Somebody was harassing my daughter, and through email, through threatening emails and such. So we went to the police, and we're there talking to this one, and she's a lady police officer. You'd think she'd understand.
Yeah.
My poor daughter is terrified. And she's like, well, there's nothing we can do. Well, there's nothing we can do. And I don't remember what I said, but I lit into her, a police officer, and she's trying to stare me down. And I stare her down. She knows that, Dad, throw me in jail. Throw me in jail. This is my daughter. I know you can do something. And she actually, relented, and she looked away, and you could tell she was a little bit ashamed that she did that. A couple days later, she called my daughter and said, yeah, we found out who it was. Just wanted to let you know.
That is another topic. And I'll tell you right now, as a policeman of many years, oftentimes, police officers forget they're public servants. They serve you. And never forget that. when you seek assistance from the police. They're public service. Don't give them a hard time about it, but they serve you. And I think oftentimes they get into the authority of things and forget that.
Yeah, give them their respect, because they have a tough job. That's a tough job.
Oh, it is.
Give them respect, but they gotta give you respect back.
Absolutely. I always lived my career like that.
So we'll do a session on that one day. Okay, let's dig into lease versus buy. And again, I've got my thoughts on this one, and I think I know where it'll go, but I'd love to hear what you I don't know what you're gonna say about this. So.
Yeah, well, lease versus buy, most people think that is a new option, a new vehicle opportunity. It isn't. There are times when you get a relatively newer used vehicle, and then the dealership doesn't do what's called a factory lease. They can do a dealership lease because maybe they took it in a trade or whatnot. And there's a lot more flexibility on that. Now, for a lease, oftentimes leases are very good for business people because they can write them off of taxes. Maybe a lease for somebody buying an electric vehicle. They want to try it out. They're not sure about the range on how electric vehicles are. Maybe you lease it for a couple of years and give it back. Generally, for a young person buying a used vehicle, you're not going to lease, you're going to buy. I don't think the opportunity would even be available to you because the vehicles that are available for lease that are used are higher end and oftentimes they're pretty close to the price of a new vehicle. So that may not be an option for you, but that's a quick thing on buying a lease. So.
And I remember when one of the main auto manufacturers years ago did their buy new every two program, actually saved them from bankruptcy. They were getting really bad, and so that tells you how much money they were making off of it. But what I remember looking into leasing, I've never leased a vehicle, because every time I look into leasing, the cost is higher, they make it so easy to get in, but at the back end, getting out is really, really difficult. That's where the costs pour in. I don't know if that's accurate.
It is. You've got to be careful of the mileage you use. If you use excess mileage, it's very expensive. If you go over mileage, you're going to pay them for that. If you get any dings to the vehicle, any damage or whatnot, that's on you too. Or you get a lesser opportunity on the buyback and it costs you more. So there is that too, right? On used vehicles too, that's where they make their money. On used vehicles. They take them in on trades, and let's say they get a vehicle that they know is valued at 10 grand on a trade-in, they'll give them 5. That's where their gravy is. That's their money. That's when you go to buy a new vehicle, or even a slightly newer used vehicle, and you're coming with a trade-in, you often can sell that trade-in personally for more, but then there's pitfalls in that too. But understand, one of the first things they're going to ask you is, do you have a trade-in? That's money to them because they'll lowball you and they'll sell that thing at a good value. And so never worry about the dealership if they ever say, well, we're not going to make any money on this deal. Baloney. If they aren't, they just won't sell it to you. That's as easy as it is. Never fall for that. And it's not your concern if they're not making any money. That's a them problem. You're worrying about you and your purchasability and your buying. So never fall for that. Don't even give it the time of day.
Good point. And we're not, they're just people got to make a living like everybody else.
Absolutely. It's about negotiation, as we talked about, right? Negotiate. Get into the game. That's what it is, a game.
Yeah. And I mentioned earlier my technique about, just give me one price, I won't negotiate. Sometimes it's fun to negotiate. If you like negotiating, negotiate.
I know a guy who lives for that. Not really my thing. I'm a little more shorter about it. Here's what we can do, whatever, and I move on. That guy will spend days doing this. To him, it's a good time. But yeah, for some people, and mind you, if you have that mindset and you're having a good time, you're gonna win. Yeah. Right? You're gonna win. You're gonna do very well.
Okay, well let's move on now. Let's talk about inspections. You're buying a vehicle, you're at a dealership, or maybe you're buying it from Joe Blow from Kokomo on the street.
Yeah.
Right? What about inspecting? Get an inspection on a vehicle. Is that a good thing?
I would say it's a must. I would say, regardless of where you buy it from, I have seen people privately sell vehicles, provide an inspection. It was a fraudulent document. It wasn't a true inspection. It was all false.
I got fooled on one of those.
Did you?
Because you're so cheap. You go online.
Yes.
And it's so cheap. You get it. And it was like, all they did was take publicly available information. It's a Ford XYZ. Has 4 wheels, has a steering wheel, and it goes forward.
Yeah.
What?
Never, never, never rely on the inspection you're getting from somebody else. Always insist as part of the negotiation that you would like an independent inspection by a garage or mechanic of your choice. If they say no, that's a red flag. Having said that, from a mainstream dealer, if you're buying from a reputable mainstream dealer, they will give you something that's called some type of an assessment. That's not a very good document. That document is a very basic assessment of the vehicle. What you could ask them is say, when you took the vehicle in on trade, or you brought it into the dealership, did you inspect it? I want that inspection. And any service invoices for work you did to the vehicle to prepare it for sale. That would be acceptable from a mainstream dealer. But from a gravel lot, small little dealer, Joey's Honest House of Cars, you want to get an independent inspection. Or if you have a friend who's a mechanic, maybe they can come and take a look at it. Buying used now is very difficult. It's never been more difficult because since COVID, there's been a shortage of vehicles and the supply chain for building vehicles, whatever, and there still kind of is a shortage. So unfortunately, when you go to buy a used vehicle, and if you say you need to get an inspection, and particularly from a private person selling, they might go, well, whatever, I got 9 guys lined up, but I'll sell it to the next guy. So that's a circumstance you're running into, but be patient. Be patient. And sometimes it's not a bad thing. You know what? We'll talk about private and buying from a dealership in a second here, right? Yeah, Kerbers and all that stuff, unlicensed businesses.
Oh yeah, that would be another bit. You're right. I got it. My last question.
We'll go into that. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. You mentioned one thing that we should talk about. That right now, it's so tough to buy a used car for the young folks. Prices are high, and that. Why is that? What's causing that?
That's believe it or not, it's COVID. So COVID really hurt the ability for supply chains. Chips for vehicles were very hard to get because they're all computerized nowadays. And so what happened is just a matter of supply and demand. And so what you're finding is that they're still trying to catch up to that. There was even an article the other day about new vehicles. Down the road, they should come down in price. Right now, there is more demand than supply. And that's a basic tenet of capitalism. That's just the way it is. And so therefore, it is harder to buy a used vehicle. But having said that, don't ever lose patience. If you lose patience and you buy something, you may regret it. So just be patient, and in time you'll get where you need to go. Or you may just want to go to a dealership because dealerships are regulated, and you may pay a little more than a private guy, but at least there's some stringent regulations that can help you, and there's places to go to if you do have a problem with a licensed dealership. While with a private guy, Joe Blow off Facebook Marketplace, as is, whatever, and you're on your own. There's no protection, so you got to balance that.
That's a good comment, and I'll mention here, and this is not a promotion, this is just an observation. These folks haven't paid me, and there's nothing in it for me or them or anything. My son was looking for a vehicle a few years ago. We pulled into this gravel lot, this little side, and I look at it, I go, no way, let's get out of here. But we went in, he wanted to look at a vehicle they had.
Yeah.
They were so good, they treated him so well. It was Alberta Truck and Auto, and they really treated him well. I was amazed. I literally saw the place. I'm like, let's get out of here.
Well, and I know of the place. I've bought from them. It was a good experience. My son has bought from them. It's a good experience. And
this is not a paid promotional.
Yeah, no, it isn't. You can look at the reviews. Careful on reviews sometimes. Sometimes they're false reviews. But there are some very ethical people out there that are selling vehicles. And as you indicate, that's one place I'm aware of that has a good reputation.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. That must be, and that's a good point you brought up with any dealership, any business you're buying from. Watch out for fake reviews.
Yeah.
Often you can tell. They're 5 stars and they're very vague. Like, wow, this is a great place and everything they do is perfect. That's probably if you read them, the real ones usually will have something that says, this is some particular thing there'll be some quirk or something different, but you can usually tell boilerplate ones,
Yeah, and also too, like you said, I mean, first glance it didn't look great, but you walked in and got to meet the people, and your gut instinct was good. So if you go into a place and your kind of gut instinct is, I don't think so, or go, wow, it's better than expected, listen to your gut. Your gut is right, and it's only a car. Walk out. There's lots of them out there. You can go anywhere. Never, never, never take a chance with all that money you're going to spend.
Good, because in a few minutes, I'm going to ask you about that in particular. But let's move on. Let's get into the documentation, reviewing of documentation before you buy. What's the best procedure there? What are the laws around that?
Well, first of all, once you sign everything, and particularly the finance documents, it's not like buying a pair of jeans at the Gap and you can just return it the next day. There is no cooling off period for vehicle purchases in Canada.
Okay.
Once you sign everything and it's financed, it is yours.
That's a good point. Other countries, other
yours.
states, check your laws.
Yeah, you check your laws.
So here in Canada, it's yours.
It's yours. So what you need to do is don't sign your life away. Don't simply say, they'll say, well, you got to sign here, 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 and you got shiny car syndrome. Oh, I want it. And you're not paying attention. Read everything. I don't understand why people sometimes blindly will trust the salesperson. They don't know them. They're not your family member or your friend. Take your time, sign everything. When you sign everything, you read. You read, and make sure. I had a son that made them change the bill of sale 4 times before he accepted it, because they kept sneaking little things on it. Having said that, a lot of them are really good, don't get me wrong, but there's a generalization oftentimes and a stereotype on a car salesperson. And usually stereotypes somewhat exist because there's some rationale behind it. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It's your purchase, it's your hard-earned money. Pay attention, take the time, read all the documents. If they try to rush you, just simply say, hey, give me time to write this and sign this and read everything. Or I'll walk out of here. Just as simple as that. You're in charge. You're in charge of that pen and that signature, because really you're going to own this thing. So please take your time and read everything. And if you have a question on something you read, ask about it, research it, which we'll talk later. But yeah, very careful in signing documents.
Good point, yeah.
Legally binding.
When you sign something, yeah, if you're being told, oh, it's okay, that'll be all right, but I need you to sign here. Once you sign, everything changes. All of a sudden, it'll be all right, it's gone and never comes back.
Well, because it's all verbal to verbal. So, it's a he said, or he said, she said. And that means nothing in a court of law or a civil court, a lawsuit. Having said that, if you text a salesperson and they make a promise to you and they don't adhere to it, you've got evidence. That's evidence. Emails, text messages, that's evidence. So sometimes it's not a bad thing to maybe deal with emails and text messages to clarify things. You may find that instead of responding to your text or email, they'll phone you because they don't want it on paper.
Lawyers are famous for that. They want you to send your commitments in writing.
Yeah.
When you talk with a lawyer, you email them, they'll call you back because they don't want to make any commitments on paper.
No, they're smart. They know the law.
There's your answer. Verbal commitments. Verbal contracts aren't worth the paper they're written on.
Used to be a time a handshake deal was honorable and meant something. Well, those days are past. So.
Yeah, great point. All right, so we're gonna wrap it up here, and we'll continue on with the next session in the next episode. We'll continue on and finish this off in the next episode. So we'll see you then. Remember, Dad loves you, and listen to your mother.